Hello everyone, I'm Greg Weaver. Welcome to the Audio Analyst. Today, I'm presenting another conversation with Maurice Jeffries that we had during his visit over the Labor Day weekend. Last week's episode, presenting my more affordable and engaging second space system, was both a novel way to introduce the concept to you and, for me, an added bonus and yet another opportunity to feature a good friend on the channel. But today's discussion reveals the true motivation for his visit, his desire to hear how my reference system had evolved since his visit last winter when he had braved the Midwestern winter to hear the world-class valve amplification company's full statement system stack. For those interested, both a link to my full review of that VAC statement gear at Part-Time Audiophile and of Maurice's chronicling of his visit to hear it are available in today's description section, along with links to his two previous visits here. However, since that last visit, there have been some significant changes in my reference system, including some astonishing speaker upgrades, some remarkable cable and electronics changes, and an entirely new world-class digital front end. Let's talk. Welcome, everybody. Once again, my friend and colleague, Maurice Jeffries here. Today we're here to talk about the big rig and the changes that have been made since the last time you were here. And
quite significant changes.
Yeah, so let me run through the changes for folks. First and foremost, we now have the von Schweikert Audio critical mass designed footers under the Ultra 9s. We also now have the True Life Audio gear from Greece.
Truly phenomenal.
The $90,000 monoblock, the SSA 350s. The $60,000 line stage, the SSP1. And we also have the full Ideon Absolute stack of digital components.
Which I had never heard before.
The stream, the time, and the Absolute Epsilon DAC. Mm-hmm. Also a few other things that I'll be talking about also in the near future. Some absolutely stellar chords from Sergei Timochev at Stealth. I've had the Sakura V1.6 in, and I'm currently using a special edition handmade V1.7 that is just staggeringly good. I'm using his USB cable that is tunable. I'll explain that when I actually talk about the cables. It makes a wonderful difference. But those are the primary changes. The turntable you were familiar with, you'd heard it before. Is the arm new? Did you hear the arm before? I don't think you'd heard this arm before. Have you?
Yes, I had heard the arm before.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, so those were the big changes.
And the arm is the Discovery.
The Discovery RS. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the system, you can go look at my webpage. I'll put the link on under the description today. So what the question I posed to you yesterday was, without... if you want to put a number on it or whatever, where in the spectrum of gear and systems you've heard do you feel this falls? And you said some very kind things. Would you mind sharing that with people?
So first, in terms of how this system ranks with the very best systems that I've heard, it is certainly comparable to, and in many respects, the superior of many of those other systems. And I've heard the Discovery, YG Acoustics, AudioNet Stern Heisenberg combination at Bill Parrish's at GTT Audio. We've all heard the mega systems at the various audio shows, Expona. I haven't been to Munich, Florida Audio Expo. Greg's system certainly ranks amongst the very best of those systems. In some respects, it does some things that I think that are simply extraordinary. For example, in terms of bass fluidity and expressiveness, I think that Greg probably has the most potent low end in terms not just of overall reach, but in terms of impact and pitch precision that I've ever heard. One of the key differences in the system versus the earlier iterations of the system that I've heard, the Ultra 9s now feature the LS2 footers. I reviewed the LS2 footers for positive feedback recently on my Endeavor Special Editions. They transform the sound of any speaker they're mated to. And what's interesting is that the first transformations that I noted, and I called Greg within a few days after putting the footers on, I said, Greg, I'm hearing massive improvements in bass to the extent that the bass loading arrangement of the speakers sounds more akin to a really good sealed box versus a transmission line, although the sound quality of those two methods can sound similar if not identical. And I noticed a marked improvement in imaging and sound staging, especially in terms of depth layering and precision in the sound stage.
The way I sum up the changes these footers bring are in bass and space.
Absolutely.
That's not all they do. The other thing that I think you hit on quickly, I'll let you speak about if you choose to, the degree of resolution. Not that this is now etched or whatever, but there's more musical resolution, which resolution serves transparency. And the transparency to the sources, we played a version of a Weather Report record you have and my first pressing, and you were aghast at the differences of those two pressings.
Greg had an earlier pressing.
I have a first press.
A first pressing, and a version that I think is markedly improved in fidelity. But the key difference that I noted in comparing the two versions, and Greg's system just makes this abundantly clear. Within 30 seconds of dropping the needle into the first groove, it became apparent that the first pressing had much better dimensionality, much better tonality. There was a richness and fullness to the recording. Wayne Shorter's soprano saxophone on my recording sounded thin and metallic. Not so at all with Greg's recording. So the vintage, the provenance of the recording actually does matter with a system like this.
Well, the last time you were on, you had said you had thought it was kind of basically mental masturbation to do vertical testing, and you were like, oops, now I get it.
I get it,
So,
yes.
yeah.
And so let me back up and let you know, this is either the third or perhaps the fourth iteration of this system.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it might even be the fourth. It might be, buddy.
So I've heard the Ultra 9s when driven by the AudioNet G2 Pre
and the Max
monoblocks. I heard the full valve amplification company
Statement Stack.
The Statement Stack with that magnificent phono stage. Yes, I love that
Oh,
device.
God. That was my phono stage of the decade.
Absolutely. I think, although I'm not certain, memory is fleeting, I think I may have heard the system with the VAC Statement integrated amplifier as
The
well.
450i.
Yes, and now with the True Life audio gear, which in some ways is as good as anything Greg's had in the house.
It's remarkably good.
And correct me if I'm wrong, these are hybrid components.
Yeah.
Which,
the preamplifier is pure tube.
Yeah.
A completely dual mono. 2 separate power switches for the preamp. The amplifiers are very nice because they use a tube front end and bipolar output transistors. So we've got a tube front end into bipolar outputs. Interestingly enough, when I met the owner and designer of TLA, when I met RS, well, I met him a while ago, but when I ran into him this last May in Munich, we had a discussion, and he was rather surprised that I was able to identify the brand of the bipolar transistors he was using, because he was like, how in the hell?
That's
I'm
impressive.
like, they sound a certain way, and he was quite impressed. He's a really great guy, by the way, and the products are just spectacular.
My grasp of audio history, this is one of the reasons I like to hang out with this guy. I always learn something new about our shared love of this hobby, this avocation. For example, I don't know enough about the sound of individual bipolar output devices to make that delineation, but
Yeah, I've been doing this a
Dr.
few weeks,
Weaver
buddy.
does. I mean, it's really impressive.
I'm old, is what he's saying.
I'm not that much younger. I'm just prettier. That's all.
Yeah, I've been at this some 50 years. So
as we were listening to LPs, to digital selections, both DSD files and flat
Streaming.
files, just
Streaming, yeah.
from Qobuz, using Rune as the operating software. What struck me was
Excuse me.
the heightened resolution of fine musical detail, but in a very natural and organic fashion.
Yeah.
I think there's better depth layering and delineation of instruments within the sound stage, but at the same time, everything remains part of the whole cloth sort of a framework that we're all seeking to achieve.
Now, do you agree with me that the Ideon stack that we've heard, granted, it's not cheap, I'm not going to say that, but we've all heard very pricey stacks. I've heard 4-piece stacks that were almost twice the price of what this gear is, that I would not own.
Yeah, you and I are in agreement about the stacks from one firm that we both find very bright. And
they have both the firms we're going to talk about had 3 initials. We won't mention them.
No, you don't mention them.
No. So.
Although Greg's choice of Scotch is really good.
No, I don't know. I don't taunt him. That's the only reason he comes to visit is the booze and the food. Yeah.
Well, and in the company of adorable 100-pound puppy
who's laying on my foot at the moment.
Greg's foot is asleep, but you can't tell. But here's the difference between a TLA SSA 350 monoblock and, let's say, a $2,500 hybrid amplifier that you can buy from any of a number of retailers. You're at the margins of where the tubes appear somewhere in the signal path because of the fluidity and naturalness of the presentation. But unlike cheaper hybrids that make the mid-range and treble sound really sweet, but the bass
they editorialize the sound.
They editorialize the
sound.
There is
right?
No
I mean, I didn't mean to intrude, but...
there is no editorializing here. I found it impossible to say, oh, that's the solid state
part
aspect of the amplifier sound. That's the tube amplifier. It's all coherently amalgamated into a coherent whole, so that you extract the best of both worlds and leave the worst at the table. They're noiseless.
The silence was scary.
And even on the very best tube gear, you're going to hear a little bit of
you
tube
can,
rush. Now, when we're talking about the VAC stack, we're talking about marginal levels.
Well, I mean, that stuff's 320,000, I think, for the 3 pieces I reviewed.
I love that stuff.
Oh, are you nuts? I could live with that gear easily.
But based on what I've heard, I'd be hard-pressed to choose one or the other. I mean, the VAC gear has just got that raw sex appeal. And these are much more subtle, clearly sophisticated, highly refined
I think they're very sophisticated looking, though. I do think they're beautiful in their own right. They're gorgeous.
But they have a much more minimalist aesthetic than the VAC gear.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the VAC gear says, we're badasses, we're priced accordingly, and we perform at the same level.
Now, I think, if you don't mind me asking you about this, I think one of the things that you tended to focus on was the naturalness, the non-hi-fi experience. And I only want to use hi-fi in the sense that most people use it, where you're listening to a stereo. There's accentuated this. It's clearly a hi-fi. This, to me, is one of the most musical experiences I've ever had in this room with the gear I've got now, especially with the digital gear I've got now.
With great recordings, I forget the pianist's name, Marie Kodomo.
Marie Kodomo, yeah. That appassionato.
Oh my goodness, some of her Pentatone recordings.
Yeah, that Pentatone. Yeah.
There is a living, breathing piano with precise, crisp transients, but more importantly for a piano in a big listening room, a beautiful sense of decay and gloom and naturalness. And this system is able to capture almost the full weight of the piano.
Yeah, and we felt, honestly, we both felt that we could hear the alignment of the keyboard, not necessarily the placement of the piano, but because of where the right-hand sounds and left-hand sounds were coming from, we felt we could differentiate how the keyboard was set up on the stage. Unless it was completely close-mic'd and mixed that way. Yeah. If it was a natural recording and it was the Pentatone, so I'm guessing it was minimalist miking. I don't know.
Yeah, the current setup of your system does that natural, organic, pull you into the recording kind of thing as well as anything I've ever heard. It's really quite amazing.
Thank you, buddy. You know my quest is get as close to the live performance as the equipment will allow. And I'm certainly a step closer than I was the last time you were here.
Well, and this is something I firmly believe. Even if you can't afford systems at this price, if you have a genuinely open-minded dealer who will let you come in for an afternoon and play your favorite tracks, just so you can hear and experience this, I think that this better informs sophisticated, thoughtful listeners who may only have $10,000 or $15,000 to spend on a system to ask this question. What combination of components will get me as close to what I just heard yesterday in my more modest listening space.
First of all, thanks for taking the time to come visit me over this holiday. I appreciate it very much.
This is a hobby we often pursue in isolation. Getting together from time to time is so valuable and so important.
Well, that's why I came to see you in January. That's why you're here now. We very much enjoy each other's company. We're good friends. He's a damn fine writer, too. Well, listen, let's wrap this up for the week. Is there anything else you want to bring up before we close for the day?
I almost forgot. You are wrapping up your review of the Hana Umami Red Moving Coil Cartridge from Garth Learer and the folks at Musical Surroundings.
Right.
And you're going to let me borrow it so I can try it in my baby Kronos with the Chronoscope RS tone arm.
Now, this is a $4,000 cartridge, which, no, it's not cheap, but it's made by Excel, the same people that make my $21,000 Atsuro Gold.
Which Greg is going to let me borrow for 6 months.
That ain't going to happen. No, you've been drinking too much of my scotch, brother. But dude, it's a stellar cartridge. It's built by the same company, Excel, who's been around since the 70s. They use the Orbre cantilever, which used to be Namiki. They've been Orbre, I think, since the beginning of this year. But it's not 5 times less than what the $21,000 cartridge
everything
is.
I've heard suggests that it's a stellar
Dude, and I heard it initially at Expona. Somebody had dropped a very pricey Airtight, and this was the replacement that was available that somebody could get. And I think it was Garth Sloan. Thank you very much, Garth. It was nice of you to do that. It knocked me out because I did my LP session with that cartridge that night.
Well, I heard the $1,200 lower price version in that same line in Philip O'Hanlon's suite.
Ah, okay.
He had the Graham Engineering version of the Spender BC1s, the Moon River integrated amplifier. I think Philip uses is it Hagerman, the air bearing turntables from Scandinavia. It was a remarkable system, and I think Philip was using a $1,200 moving coil and not a $4,000.
Yeah,
and he got excellent sound from a $1,200
but buddy,
cartridge.
I have no problem putting this Hana at $4,000 up against my $21,000 flagship reference. It's close. It's not the same, but one would hope not. But I think you're going to be pretty amazed with it when you get it down there. I'm curious to see what your follow-up has to say about it. My review should be out maybe by the time this is out. I don't know. It'll be very soon.
Mine will be out within the next decade or so.
Well, brother, thank you so much for coming to visit.
Hey, Brother Mike.
Always fun.
Absolutely.
And we'll see if we can get you back on the channel again.
Hey, I'd love to.
All right.
Stay safe, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you again.
Godspeed.
Maurice, I can't thank you enough for making the time to visit and share your insights and thoughts with us here. For those interested, Maurice will be publishing his full take on his visit and the experience at Enjoy the Music in the immediate future. As always, thanks for taking the time to drop by today. Further information on supporting the channel may be found in today's description section or at my website, theaudioanalyst.com. Please stay safe and keep the music playing. Till next time, cheers.